In the taiga, there are no trifles. Every sound, every breath, every crack of a branch matters, especially in winter, when life itself shrinks to a single point, to a single heartbeat in icy armor. There was that special ringing frost that comes at the end of February. The crust, hard as glass, held gamekeeper Ivan Belov, preventing his skis from sinking. He walked along his beat, checking the feeders and counting the tracks. The silence was absolute. Not the kind of silence you find in the city, empty and deafening, but a living silence, filled with millions of frozen lives waiting for their moment. And into this silence, like a thin needle, a sound pierced. It was barely audible, high-pitched, plaintive, almost cat-like, but with such a note of despair that Ivan felt a chill under his jacket. It was not just a cry for help. It was the cry of a creature that had no time left. Ivan followed the sound, taking off his skis and picking up his rifle, more out of habit than necessity. The sound led him to an old kurumnik, a stone river as we call them. Huge moss-covered boulders, piled on top of each other by the chaotic force of an ancient glacier. In winter, this place is a trap. The rocks are covered with ice, turning the crevices into traps from which there is no escape. The cry grew louder, and now it sounded like a growl, low, muffled, full of pain and rage. Ivan approached the edge of the stone chaos and looked down. His heart skipped a beat. There, 2 meters below him, in an icy crevice between 2 boulders, a lynx was stuck. A large female, the mistress of this forest. Her amber eyes, usually full of wild, cold fire, now burned with feverish despair. She had apparently jumped and slipped on the treacherous ice. Her hind paw was pinned by a rock, and her front paw was twisted at a completely impossible, unnatural angle. It was broken. When she saw him, the lynx hissed, the sound like red-hot metal tearing apart. She arched her back, trying to free herself, but only drove the sharp edges of the ice deeper into her body. She was the embodiment of helplessness and rage. Ivan knew the rules. He knew not to approach. A wounded predator cornered knows neither fear nor gratitude, only instinct. And instinct told her to kill anything that came near. Instinct, honed by decades of life in the taiga, screamed at him to retreat. He was about to retreat, to return to the hut for a rope and a pole, when suddenly he heard it. Another sound. Quiet. Squeaky. Almost indistinguishable against the background of the mother's growling. It did not come from the pit. It came from the side, from under a snow-covered juniper bush. Ivan slowly walked around the bush, and what he saw made him forget about rules, caution, and common sense. 2 tiny trembling balls lay huddled together in the snow. 2 lynx cubs. They were so small that they seemed to consist only of fluff and huge, still blind eyes. They barely squeaked, their bodies already covered with frost. They were freezing right now, and Ivan understood. He understood everything. The lynx wasn't just hunting. She was rushing towards them. And now, hearing their fading squeaks, she was struggling out of her icy prison not for herself. She was struggling towards them. And her despair was not from pain. It was the despair of a mother who sees her children dying and cannot help them. There was no time to think. He didn't have hours to go for help. He had minutes. "Quiet, mother," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "Quiet. I won't hurt you. I want to help." The lynx responded with a furious growl. She didn't believe him. She didn't believe anyone. Ivan took off his backpack. He took out his first aid kit. It always contained a syringe and an ampule of a mild tranquilizer, for emergencies, for dogs or wolves. The dose was calculated for a dog. For a lynx weighing 30 kilograms, it was not enough to put it to sleep, but enough to dull its fury. But how to get close to it? It was a living ball of nerves and claws. He slowly began to descend into the crevice. Every step was a risk. The ice was slippery, the rocks sharp. He stumbled, and small pieces of rock fell down. The lynx lunged as far as her trapped paw would allow. Her healthy claws, 5 centimeters of pure steel, slashed the air a centimeter from his boot. "Calm down," he repeated, freezing. "Calm down." She was breathing heavily, steam escaping from her mouth, and in her eyes, he saw something more than rage. He saw a plea. She looked at him, then at the bush, from which came an almost inaudible squeak. She was begging, as best she could. Ivan took his old leather belt from his waist, thick tanned leather that had served him faithfully for 10 years. He made a loop at the end. A lasso. "I'm sorry, beautiful. It has to be done." He needed one chance. He needed to immobilize her healthy front paw, the one that could tear his face apart. He slowly lowered the loop, holding the belt at arm's length. She swiped at him. Missed. He lowered it again. She swiped again, and this time her paw, her powerful clawed paw, went straight into the loop. A sharp jerk. Ivan pulled the belt tight, pressing her paw against her body. She roared. It was a roar that seemed to crack the stones themselves, a roar of betrayal. She thought he had attacked her. She struggled and growled, but the belt held. Now the syringe. Ivan climbed over the boulder and ended up behind her. She couldn't reach him. He felt for the powerful thigh muscle under the thick fur. A short, precise injection. She didn't even feel it in her agony. He stepped back and waited. A minute passed. 2. The growling did not subside, but the former fury was gone. It became muffled, tired. The lynx's eyelids grew heavy. She still looked at him with hatred, but her body began to betray her. She went limp. Now it was her paw, the one that was broken. It was twisted and pinned between 2 rocks. Ivan took out his knife and used it as a lever. The rock wouldn't budge. Then he braced his shoulder against it. The ice cracked. The rock moved a centimeter. The lynx moaned. It was a dull, drawn-out moan that made Ivan's throat tighten. "Hang in there, mother. Hang in there. Just a moment." He threw his whole weight against it. There was a dry crunch, and the stone finally gave way. Ivan carefully freed the crushed paw. It was a terrible sight. The bone was broken in 2 places. "Now, up." He wrapped his arms around her chest. She was heavy, limp, but still alive. He dragged her, pressing his knees into the ice, scratching his hands on the sharp edges. He pulled her onto a flat surface, onto the snow. Then he carried her to the bush where her kittens were squeaking. As soon as they smelled their mother, they crawled toward her, poking their blind little faces into the thick fur on her belly. The lynx, half asleep from the medicine, opened her eyes. She saw them. She made a soft, rumbling sound, like a purr, and instinctively pulled them toward her, shielding them from the icy wind with her body. Ivan did everything he could. Almost everything. He returned to his backpack. He took out 2 sticks, tied them tightly with bandages, making a primitive splint. Carefully, talking to her, he straightened her broken paw and secured the splint. The lynx only twitched her ear. She was too weak, and her maternal instinct was now stronger than the pain. He sat next to them for about 10 minutes, watching the kittens eagerly cling to their mother. Life was returning, but he knew she needed strength. She wouldn't be able to hunt with that paw for a long time, and she had 2 to feed. Ivan opened his untouchable reserve, dried meat that he had been saving for himself. A piece of salted fish fat. He put it all on a flat rock next to her so she could reach it. "This is for you," he said. "For now? Then you're on your own." He got up and walked away without looking back. In the Taiga, you can't look back. Once you've done your job, you leave. Ivan didn't sleep all night. He thought about her. He heard wolves howling in the distance and prayed that they wouldn't find her trail. A wounded predator with offspring is easy prey. At dawn, he couldn't stand it anymore and went back. He walked, ready to see the worst. The place was empty. On the snow, where the lynx had been lying, there was only a dark, flattened spot. Ivan came closer. Footprints. One large one, the mother's, and she was limping. She had left, dragging her bandaged paw behind her. And next to it, 2 tiny, barely noticeable footprints of her kittens. She had left. She had taken them to a safe place. Ivan sighed with relief. They were alive. He was about to leave when his gaze fell on the very flat stone where he had placed the meat and fat yesterday. His food was gone. She had eaten everything. But in its place, on the stone, neatly arranged as if on a plate, lay a vole, small, grey, still warm. It was dead, but untouched. Not a single bite. Ivan froze. He knew the laws of the taiga. Here, no one owes anyone anything. Here, everyone survives as best they can. There is no place for gratitude here, but it lay before him. A vole, payment. It hadn't just taken his food. It understood that it was a gift, and it responded. It left him the best it could get in its condition, the only currency it knew. It paid its debt. Ivan slowly reached out and took the mouse. That day, he, an old gamekeeper who thought he knew everything about the forest, understood one simple thing. We are not the masters of this world. We are just guests. And sometimes, if we are very lucky, we are allowed to touch its true, unwritten laws. And these laws are far older and fairer than all of ours.